My family stole my credit at 17, sued me at 25, and tried to destroy my company. But I didn't break Reddit stories. From identity theft to a lawsuit claiming they deserved my success, every attack pushed me further from the people who should have protected me. But when they tried to burn down everything I built, they learned I wasn't the scared kid in the basement anymore. Hey Reddit, Vincent here, 30 now, but the story I'm about to tell you started when I was 14 and realized, very abruptly, that if I didn't build a life for myself, nobody in my family was going to hand me one. In fact, they were going to do the opposite. The night everything changed, my dad came home from the plant angry at the world again, slamming doors like they owed him money. Mom was complaining about bills piling up, the electric company threatening shutoff, again, and my older brother Adrian, golden child of Fairmont, Ohio, was out being celebrated for scoring 2 touchdowns in a JV game like he'd personally won the Super Bowl. Me? I was in the basement surrounded by the gutted remains of an ancient POS system I'd pulled from a neighbor's trash. To everyone else it was junk. To me, it was the first thing in my life that actually made sense. I was soldering a busted power rail when Dad came downstairs, took one look at the wires, and sighed like I'd personally disappointed the entire lineage of Valentinys. "Why can't you be more like Adrian?" The unofficial family motto, engraved on my childhood like a tombstone. I didn't answer, I never did, but something cracked inside me that night. Because I'd spent my whole life being compared to a brother who could do no wrong, while everything I did was treated like a distraction, a phase, a waste of time. Except this time, I was done waiting for approval. By the end of that week, I'd repaired the POS system so perfectly that Mr. Kowalski, the neighbor who'd thrown it out, told the auto parts store owner about me. That guy came knocking with $50 and a frozen computer. I fixed it in 2 hours. He handed me $75. That was the moment. The click in my brain. The quiet realization that I could build something real, something of my own, without needing permission from the people who kept telling me I'd never measure up. From that point forward, things escalated quickly. Word spread. Small businesses needed cheap tech help. And I had exactly the skills nobody else bothered learning. By 15, I was making more a week than my mom's part-time job brought in. By 16, the business was growing faster than I could keep up. And by 17? My family finally realized I was worth something. Not as a son. Not as a human being. But as an income source. And that's when the real nightmare began. Success at 15 looks cute from the outside. Look at the little entrepreneur. But inside my house it triggered the full Valentini extraction protocol. The moment my parents realized businesses were handing me real money, their attitudes flipped like someone hit a switch. Suddenly Dad wasn't annoyed by the wires in the basement. He was curious about how much those wires were earning. Suddenly Mom wasn't lecturing me about wasting time. She was asking when I'd get paid next. And suddenly Adrian, my golden child brother, started treating me like I was his personal ATM with a pulse. The first time I walked in with a $300 check, Mom snatched it from my hand before I could even take my shoes off. "You need to contribute to the household now," she said. Household meaning her and Adrian's lifestyle. I was 15. From then on, they demanded rent, utility share, food contributions, and whatever other excuse they could come up with to siphon money out of me. Of course, Adrian, full-time consumer, part-time prince, paid nothing. They'd slip him gas money with the same hand they used to take my earnings. And I was stupid enough to think it would stop there. Then came the night that changed everything. I was 17. I'd just finished installing a basic inventory system at a plumbing supplier. Made $900 in a single job, biggest payday of my life. Brought it home like an idiot, thinking maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally be proud. Instead, Dad sat me down with the seriousness of a man about to reveal a terminal diagnosis. "You're earning real money now," he said. "So starting next month, rent is $400. For my childhood bedroom? It's time you pull your weight." They'd been taking my money for years, but this felt different. Deliberate. Calculated. And then it got worse. A week later, I got a letter in the mail, credit card bill, my name on it. A card I'd never applied for. Maxed out. Then another. And another. $28,000 of debt in my name. When I confronted them, Mom didn't even blink. We needed to fix the roof. And Adrian needed a reliable car for college. You have good credit because of the business. Why not use it for the family? Family. Funny how that word only came up when they wanted something. Dad waved me off like I was being dramatic. You'll pay it off eventually. You're good with money. Adrian walked by, smirked, and said, "Thanks for the car, little bro." I swear something in me turned to stone right then. That was the moment I realized I didn't have a family. I had creditors with my last name. And if I wanted a future, I'd have to claw my way out myself, starting with cutting them off completely. There are moments in life when you stop being a kid, not because you want to, but because someone shoves you off the edge. For me, that moment happened in a greasy booth at a rundown diner on the edge of Fairmont, sitting across from my cousin Felix with 3 credit card statements spread out between us like crime scene photos. He looked at the numbers. Looked at me. Looked back at the numbers. "Vincent," he said slowly, "this isn't a mistake. This is felony-level identity theft." "They're my parents," I muttered, still half in denial. "Yeah," he said, "and they robbed you like seasoned professionals." Felix didn't sugarcoat things, which is exactly what I needed. He put me in touch with his mom's friend, Marlene, a lawyer with the vibe of a woman who'd fought bigger monsters than my parents before lunchtime. She reviewed the documents, listened to my recorded conversations, and finally leaned back in her chair. "You have 2 options," she said. 1. Press criminal charges. 2. Pursue legal emancipation. Criminal charges sounded unthinkable. They were still my parents, dysfunctional or not. So emancipation it was. 3 months of documenting every dollar they took, every unauthorized charge, every recording where they talked about using family credit, like it was a community garden. The day the emancipation papers were served, the house erupted like I detonated a grenade in the living room. Dad turned purple. Mom cried like she was auditioning for a soap opera. Adrian stood behind them with that "How dare you inconvenience us?" face. Mom wailed. "How could you do this to your own family?" I pointed at the mountain of debt. "You did this." Their response? "This is what family does. We support each other." I laughed. Out loud. Couldn't help it. "Really? Then where was the support when I was paying your bills? When you stole my credit? When you used me to finance Adrian's future?" Mom broke down harder. Dad kicked a chair. "Adrian told me I was dramatic. It was clarifying. I packed a single duffel bag and walked out. Bruce D'Angelo, older brother of my shop teacher, let me crash in his spare room. Kind guy. Quiet. No questions, just handed me a house key and said, 'You work hard. That's enough.' In that room, on a mattress that smelled faintly of motor oil, I built the next phase of my business. Filed for LLC status. Opened new bank accounts. Hid every trace of my finances like I was entering witness protection. But the part that still sticks with me? Despite everything they'd done, every dollar stolen, every card maxed out, I still hesitated before the court hearing. Some part of me hoped they'd show up remorseful, or apologetic, or even just vaguely human. Instead, my mom walked into the courtroom wearing pearls and tears, claiming they'd only managed my money to help their troubled son. My dad testified that allowing me to use the basement counted as early investment capital. Adrian said I owed him opportunities because he was the older brother. The judge looked at them like they were performing abstract theater. Then she turned to me. "Mr. Valentini, based on the evidence, the court finds clear exploitation. Your petition for emancipation is granted." Just like that, at 17, I was legally on my own. Walking out of the courthouse into sunlight, I felt something crack free inside me. Not fear. Not sadness. resolve. My family had taken my money, my credit, my childhood. But from this point forward, everything I built would be mine, and mine alone. And I was just getting started. Emancipation didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like standing in a burning building and realizing you were the only one left to put out the fire. I moved into a converted garage apartment behind an old warehouse. One room, concrete floors, a draft that could cut through bone, and a water heater that sounded like it was coughing its last breath. But it was mine, and for the first time, nobody could take anything from me. Well, except the $28,000 in fraudulent credit card debt. That part stayed. Every penny I earned went straight into minimum payments. After rent and business expenses, I ate ramen so often that the grocery store cashier began greeting me with, "Usual week?" Like I was a regular at a restaurant no one should brag about. I made a spreadsheet tracking the debt, and another tracking projected income, and another for business expenses, and another out of pure spite. The math said I'd need 6 years, to pay off the damage my parents did. Fine. I'd take 6. I'd take 16 if I had to. Because every dollar I paid was one less dollar of control they had over me. While my bank account was dying slowly, my business was doing the opposite. Blue-collar stores were the perfect market, small auto shops, hardware stores, contractor supply places. They didn't trust big tech companies, but they trusted some kid who showed up on time, didn't talk down to them, and fixed things cheap. At 18, I landed my first real chain gig, a 5-location auto parts operation that wanted unified inventory across all stores. I didn't know how to build it. So I learned. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, miles of code, enough coffee to qualify as a medical concern. When it finally launched and worked flawlessly, something shifted. I wasn't just the kid in the basement fixing broken systems anymore. I was a professional. Meanwhile, my parents' house was falling apart in poetic symmetry. Felix kept me updated. Mom picked up double shifts. Dad's hours got cut. Adrian partied his way through freshman year until he got kicked out of college for cheating on a group project. They blamed everyone except themselves. The professors. The school. The economy. Me, somehow. I ignored all of it. I had bigger things to worry about, like the 12-location hardware chain that needed their entire operation rebuilt when I was 19. I hired help for the first time. 2 community college guys, 1 hardware genius, 1 database wizard. We worked out of my tiny warehouse office with desks made from old doors. But we delivered results. And with each project, the debt shrank. $28,000 became $21,000. Then $17,000. Then $12,000. Every time a balance dropped, it felt like a chain snapping off my back. It took 6 brutal years. 6 years of saying no to vacations, nights out, new clothes, anything remotely fun. And then one day, at 23, I typed in the final payment amount, hit submit, and watched the screen blink. Account paid in full. I stared at those words longer than I cared to admit. I didn't cry. Didn't cheer. I just sat in silence, letting 6 years of anger, exhaustion, pressure, and survival drain out of me like someone had opened a valve. Then Felix showed up with pizza and said, "So, what now?" I didn't have an answer yet. But I knew this. The life my parents tried to bury me under? I was about to build something so big, so solid, so undeniable, that not even they could touch it. The funny thing about paying off $28,000 of someone else's debt is that when you finally climb out of the hole, the first thing you want to do is build something so deep and solid that no one can ever bury you again. For me, that something started with real estate. Nothing fancy, a beat-up duplex on the edge of town that smelled like mildew and generational despair. The kind of property people drive past and think, someone should really tear that down. I bought it in cash at 23. Cash. Not because I was rich. Because I was done letting banks, and especially my family, have leverage over me ever again. I spent 6 months renovating that place. Nights, weekends, early mornings. Me and Felix sanding floors, fixing drywall, replacing stolen copper pipes, cursing at plumbing that hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. When it was done, though, it was beautiful. Not mansion beautiful. Not Instagram beautiful. But mine. No signatures from parents, no cosigners, no debt collectors hovering over me like vultures. 2 tenants moved in. Reliable income. Zero drama. From there, business exploded. By 24, Valentini Systems had become the go-to tech solution for half the small industrial shops in 3 counties. By 25, I was speaking at small business expos about blue-collar tech integration. Fancy phrase for, here's how to stop your 1998 computer from catching fire. By 26, I had 6 employees, a warehouse office, a work van with my logo on it, and a reputation that reached into the next state. And the entire time? Silence from my family. Honestly, it was peaceful. But peace from toxic people is temporary by nature, and my parents, well, they were ticking time bombs in human skin. So I should have known something was coming. It arrived in the form of an envelope. White. Plain. Innocent looking. Inside? An invitation to my dad's retirement party. The man who stole my credit. The man who treated my business like his personal ATM. The man who told me I owed him for being alive. He wanted me at his celebration. I should have thrown it out. Instead, I stared at it for an hour wondering why they suddenly wanted me back in the picture. Felix was the one who tipped me off. Dude, he said. They've been asking about your business. A lot. Red flag number 1. I went anyway, stupid, curious, hopeful, whatever you call it, and the moment I walked in, I knew exactly what this was. The expensive decorations. The brand new suit Dad was wearing. Adrian bragging loudly about his investment strategies. Mom telling every relative how successful I'd become. It wasn't a party. It was research. A reconnaissance mission. They wanted information. Numbers. Income. Assets. And like a fool, I'd walked right into their little data-gathering trap. For weeks later, the real blow hit. They sued me. Not for money I owed. For money they believed they deserved. And not a little. They demanded 35% ownership of my company. $150,000 in emotional damages. Compensation for raising me. Apparently, success wasn't something I earned. It was something I had stolen from the family. That was the day the gloves came off. You want war? Fine. I'd spent my whole childhood fighting for scraps. Now I had teeth. If you've never been sued by your own parents, let me tell you, it hits different. Not painful different. Absurd different. Like watching a toddler sprint full speed into a sliding glass door. You're horrified, but also thinking, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. The lawsuit was a 42-page novella of delusion. According to my parents and Adrian, my success was built on years of parental investment. My childhood bedroom counted as business incubation space. The electricity powering my soldering iron was in-kind financial support. Adrian had suffered lost opportunities because attention was unfairly diverted. To me, I had stolen the life he deserved. And my personal favorite, I owed them 35% of the company because they created the foundation for its existence. The foundation they're referring to? A basement, a stolen social security number, and $28,000 in fraudulent credit card debt. My attorney Julian read the complaint, closed the folder, and said, "Well, they really committed to this fantasy." We filed our response within 48 hours. But the real magic happened during discovery, the part of the legal process where both sides exchange documents. That's when the truth spilled out. Emails between my parents and Adrian plotting to reconnect with me specifically so they could sue. Adrian secretly collecting information on my business for over a year. My dad taking out a loan to buy an RV under the assumption they'd win a massive settlement. My mom telling distant relatives I promised to take care of the family financially. Adrian creating fake LinkedIn accounts to pose as potential clients and dig for numbers. An attempt, caught by my IT team, to access my business banking using childhood-based security questions. All of this went straight into our evidence binder labeled Exhibit A, the circus. Depositions were even better. Mom put on her best, tragic heroine, routine, tearfully explaining how emotionally devastating it was that I abandoned the family. Julian asked her one question. Ma'am, did you open 3 credit cards in your minor son's name without his consent? Silence. Then, well, we needed the money. Dad insisted he'd given me business mentorship. Julian asked him to list a single piece of business advice he'd ever given me. He couldn't. Adrian tried to claim I'd stolen opportunities meant for him. Julian asked. Which opportunities exactly? Adrian blinked like someone had unplugged him. You know. Opportunities. My attorney actually had to pause the deposition because she was laughing too hard. The court date finally came. My family showed up dressed like they were auditioning for an episode of Victims of the Year. We showed up with a binder full of evidence and the receipts of every terrible thing they'd done. The judge listened. Read. Asked questions. Then she gave her ruling. The plaintiff's claims are entirely without merit. This case is dismissed with prejudice. Additionally, the plaintiffs are ordered to pay the defendant's legal fees and court costs. Translated. They lost. They can never file this nonsense again. They owe me money now. As we walked out, Adrian tried to approach me, sputtering. You're really going to let us lose everything? I looked him dead in the eyes. I didn't take anything from you. You tried to take everything from me. This is the bill coming due. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Because deep down, even he knew the truth. They'd spent years using me. Now they were just facing the consequences. After the lawsuit, things got quiet. Not peaceful quiet. More like the quiet you hear in the woods right before something big and stupid crashes through the trees. I went back to work, focused on scaling the business, trying to put the whole fiasco behind me. But people like my family don't go away. They regroup. They scheme. They wait for the next opening. And they found one. It started with an email from a longtime client. Hey Vincent. We got an interesting call from a representative at Computra Solutions. They said your company is unstable and might be shutting down soon. Just checking in before we make any decisions. Computra Solutions. My biggest competitor. And the representative? Adrian. I felt the anger build slow and steady, like a boiler heating up. I called Felix. Yeah, he said, sounding miserable. I heard. He bragged about it at a cookout. Said he's finally getting back what he's owed. Great. So, my brother hadn't learned anything. He just changed strategies. Now he was trying to destroy my business instead of steal it. The difference didn't matter. Both required the same response. For the next 2 weeks, clients called me asking about rumors. Computra salespeople were using scripts that referenced my early years, stuff only someone with inside knowledge would know. One client even repeated a line verbatim that Adrian used. I'd switch before something bad happens. That phrase told me everything. He wasn't selling. He was sabotaging. Julian laid out my options. Technically, he said, it's not illegal to tell clients whatever garbage he wants. Immoral? Yes. Actionable? Harder. So if I wanted to stop Adrian, I had to do it the same way I built my business. Face to face. On merit. I spent the next 2 weeks personally visiting every client, driving across counties, walking into shops, shaking hands, fixing things for free, upgrading features, answering every question directly. People respect what they can see. People trust who shows up. By the end of week 2, 100% of clients stayed with me. 3 said they'd never hire Computra again. 1 told me, "Your brother sounded desperate, man. Like he needed this more than he needed oxygen." Not the victory I wanted, but one I'd take. Computra fired Adrian 6 weeks in. Apparently, sabotaging competitors by spreading rumors isn't appreciated when it blows back on the company. He'd caused multiple complaints and cost them clients. They escorted him out. Felix told me he cried in the parking lot. I didn't feel satisfied. Just tired. So very tired. Because I knew the pattern. He'd get desperate. Mom would stir the pot. Dad would come up with some grand justification. And then they'd try something even worse. And I was right. Because 3 months later, a formal notice arrived from the state licensing board. A complaint had been filed accusing my company of unsafe installations, fraudulent billing, violating state code, deceiving clients. Anonymous complaint. Except the complaint contained details nobody outside my family knew about. Like my original basement workspace. The exact age of the first systems I refurbished. Old payment schedules from when I was 16. Information that wasn't public. Information that hadn't been mentioned in years. Information only one group of people could have provided. My attorney asked the obvious question. You realize if this complaint sticks, your contracts freeze. All of them. Yeah. I realized. Which meant this wasn't pettiness. This wasn't jealousy. This was a deliberate attempt to destroy everything I'd built. And that was the moment, standing there holding that stupid envelope, that something in me went cold. I wasn't going to let them take anything from me ever again. I wasn't the scared 16-year-old stuck under their roof. I was a grown man who'd built something real. And if they wanted a war? Fine. They'd get one. The licensing board gave me 14 days to respond. 14 days to prove I wasn't a fraud. 14 days to fight accusations crafted by people who hadn't supported me a single day in my life. 14 days to keep my company alive. I didn't panic. I got to work. Pulled every installation record. Every invoice. Every safety certification. Every system log. Every client testimonial. My team, who had no idea why someone would come after us this hard, jumped in without question. They believed in the company more than my own family ever had. Felix, meanwhile, looked like he wanted to drive to my parents' apartment and start flipping tables. You know they did this, he said. Yeah, I answered. But I'll win cleaner than they attack. The board sent an investigator named Hartman. Tall, mid-50s, glasses, stone-flat expression. She wasn't friendly, but she wasn't hostile either. Just clinical. Professional. Thorough. She toured the shop, tested equipment, reviewed logs, interviewed clients by phone, and watched how we worked on active installs. 2 days in, she asked the question I'd been expecting. Someone clearly has a detailed understanding of your early operations. Want to tell me anything about that? I didn't lie. I didn't embellish. I told her everything. The identity theft. The emancipation. The lawsuit. The ongoing harassment. The sabotage attempts. The fact that my family had decades-old details nobody else would know. She didn't show emotion, but I saw her jaw tighten. Do you have documentation of that history? I handed her a binder. She took it without a word. That was the moment I knew my parents and brother had miscalculated. This woman didn't tolerate manipulation. 5 days later, the licensing board released its decision. Complaint dismissed. No violations found. No further action required. But that wasn't the best part. The final line in the letter. This complaint appears retaliatory and malicious in nature. I sat back in my office chair and breathed out for what felt like the first time in weeks. They hadn't just failed. They'd exposed themselves. Again. 3 days after that, I got a message from Felix. They're panicking. Complaining the board misunderstood. Adrian's screaming that the universe owes him. Dad says you attacked them? Mom's telling everyone you're ungrateful. Of course they were. Of course they flipped the narrative. Victimhood was the only currency they had left. But none of that mattered anymore. Because something had finally shifted in me, quietly but permanently. For years I'd been reacting. Surviving. Building while dodging the next hit. But now I wasn't reacting to them at all. I was simply living my life. Growing my business. Planning my future. They weren't a storm overhead anymore. They were background noise behind a closed window. Barely audible. Completely irrelevant. And that's when the chain reaction happened, the one none of them expected. Because the hardware rental company offering a 43-location contract? They didn't just proceed. They expanded it. National chain. Hundreds of stores. A multi-year deal that would double my company, again. And while signing the contract, the regional manager said something that hit deeper than he realized. Honestly, Vincent, what sold us wasn't just your work. It was how you handled getting attacked. Integrity under pressure tells us more about a vendor than anything else. In that moment, I realized something simple. My family hadn't sabotaged me. They'd showcased me. They'd given me the perfect opportunity to prove exactly who I was. And I'd done it. Not for them. Not against them. But beyond them. And they would never catch up again. The funny thing about success is that it doesn't feel like fireworks. Not for people like me. It feels like quiet rooms. Like breathing space. Like not jumping whenever the phone rings because you're afraid it's another crisis with your name on it. Life finally leveled out. Business was booming. Karina and I were planning the wedding. Felix had become more of a brother than my actual brother ever was. Employees were thriving, clients were happy, and the expansion contract was about to triple our footprint. Everything stabilizing at once felt unnatural, like the universe had forgotten to throw something sharp in my direction. Turns out I didn't need to wait long. Because when you rise, your past has a way of noticing. It started with a phone call. Not from my parents. Not from Adrian. From their landlord. A guy named Howard. Polite voice. Sounded genuinely uncomfortable calling me. Hi, is this Vincent? I'm sorry to bother you. Your name came up in a situation with your family. They're behind on rent, significantly. I've already given multiple extensions. I was told you might step in. I nearly laughed. They'd given my number to their landlord. To solve their overdue bills. Who told you that? I asked. Your mother. Of course. He paused. I'm not calling to pressure you. I just needed to confirm before I proceed with eviction. Eviction. That landed differently. I thanked him for calling, hung up, and sat there staring at nothing. Because here's the thing. I didn't want them homeless. I didn't want them hungry. I didn't want kids growing up in what I grew up in, repeating the cycle. But I also didn't want to be the ATM they'd always believed I was. So I called Felix. He answered on the first ring. Let me guess, Felix said. They're getting evicted. Yeah. And they want you to fix it. Yeah. He exhaled a long, knowing breath. You're not obligated to save them. I know. But you're also not obligated to enjoy watching them fall. He wasn't wrong. What I felt was complicated. Old wounds. New independence. Resentment. Empathy. Exhaustion. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted distance. But distance doesn't exist when the past uses your phone number as a life raft. Later that night, Karina found me in the workshop, sitting on the tailgate of the rebuilt Ford, lost in thought. You look like you're trying to solve a math equation someone set on fire, she said. Something like that. I explained the situation. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said something that shifted everything. Do you trust them with anything you give them? No. Do you owe them anything? No. So why are you treating this like a moral test instead of what it is? A choice. Yours. Not theirs. It was simple. And it was freeing. The next morning, I called Howard back. "Thanks for letting me know," I said. "But I won't be covering their rent." He didn't sound shocked. Just relieved to have an answer. I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the victim of their decisions. I felt like the architect of mine. That very same afternoon, an envelope arrived at my business. No return address. No formal letter. Just a handwritten note on cheap paper. It said, "You did this to us." Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Didn't need one. The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. I stared at it for a moment, then placed it in the shredder without a second thought. Not out of anger. Out of closure. Because for the first time since I'd started this whole journey at 14 years old, I didn't react. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I just chose. My life. My future. My boundaries. And the past, finally, had no claim on any of it. 3 weeks after the eviction notice, something unexpected happened. Not a phone call. Not a letter. Not a demand. A knock on my shop door. I was in the back testing a batch of repaired scanners when Mason poked his head into the bay. Vincent? There's somebody asking for you. Says he won't leave." "Who?" Mason just gave me a look that said, "You already know." My stomach dropped. I walked out front. And yeah, there he was. Adrian. Standing in the lobby of Valentini Systems like he belonged there, hands shoved into the pockets of an old jacket, shoulders slumped like the world had sat on him overnight. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Just diminished. Like life had finally stopped cushioning him the way our parents always had. I didn't say a word at first. Neither did he. Then, after a few seconds, he muttered, "Hey." I folded my arms. "Why are you here, Adrian?" He swallowed hard. Looked everywhere except at me. I didn't know where else to go. My jaw clenched. Because that sentence, those 7 words, were exactly what I used to feel at 16 when I was drowning financially and emotionally and had nobody. Difference was, I found a way out. Adrian never tried. He waited for someone else to fix it. "Mom and Dad got evicted," he added quietly. "I know. We're staying with a friend of theirs, but it's bad. Mom's working nights. Dad's not doing well. And I can't get a job anywhere." I raised an eyebrow. "You got fired 3 times in the last year." He flinched. "Yeah. I know." He finally looked up at me then. And for the first time in my entire life, Adrian didn't look smug, or defensive, or entitled. He looked scared. Actually scared. "Vincent. I messed up. I know I messed up. With the lawsuit. With the clients. With everything. I just..." He stopped talking, because his voice cracked. People like Adrian don't crack. Not unless life has hit them harder than their ego can absorb. "I came here because I don't know what else to do." There was a time when hearing him say that would have lit something warm in my chest. Some hopeful part of me wondering if maybe he finally understood. If maybe the brother I'd wanted for years might exist. Not anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I just felt detached. I gestured toward a chair. "Sit." He sat. I didn't. "You're not here because you want to fix our relationship," I said. "You're here because you need something." His silence confirmed it. "What do you want?" He swallowed again. "A job." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. "Adrian, you tried to destroy my business. Twice. You used my client list against me. You spread rumors. You filed that anonymous complaint." He shook his head vigorously. "That wasn't me. I swear. The complaint, that was Mom. She was desperate. She thought if your business got shut down, you'd have to come home." I held up a hand. "I'm not here to dissect who did what. I'm here to answer the only question you came to ask. He froze. Hope flickered. Are you going to hire me? He asked. I looked him right in the eyes. No. He blinked. Like he genuinely hadn't considered that answer was possible. But I'm your brother. And I'm the same brother you sued, I said calmly. The same brother you tried to sabotage. The same brother you only show up for when you're drowning. He looked like he'd been punched. But I'm trying to make it right. No, I corrected. You're trying to avoid consequences. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Inevitable. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. I don't hate you, you know. I nodded slowly. I know. Because deep down, Adrian never hated me. He envied me. Envied that I'd built a life he thought he was entitled to. Envied that I succeeded without shortcuts. Envied that I became the man he pretended he already was. Look, I said finally. You're not a child. You're not helpless. If you want your life to change, you start over. You get any job you can, you stick with it, you rebuild. He stared at his shoes. That's hard. I didn't sugarcoat it. So is everything worth doing? He didn't move. Didn't argue. Just sat there absorbing the truth he'd avoided for decades. After a long minute, he stood. Okay, he said quietly. Yeah. Okay. He walked to the door. Hand on the handle, he paused. Turned back toward me. Can I call you sometime? Not for money. Just to try again? As brothers? I took a breath. This was a crossroads. Not about revenge. Not about letting him back in. Not about being responsible for him. Just about boundaries. And healing. And realism. You can call, I said. But you need to rebuild your life yourself. He nodded. For the first time ever, he didn't argue. Thanks, he whispered. Then he left. Mason came out from the back, eyebrows raised. You okay? He asked. I surprised myself with my answer. Yeah, I said. For the first time, yeah? It wasn't closure. Not yet. But it was the beginning of something better. A future not defined by what my family took from me, but by what I refused to let them take anymore. Adrian never did call. Not once. But months later, Felix told me he'd gotten a steady warehouse job, stuck with it, even got promoted. And for the first time, I believed Adrian might actually grow up, without dragging me down with him. As for me, my business thrived. My home stayed peaceful. And my past finally stopped steering my life. Not because they changed, but because I did.